All right, hello and welcome everyone. This is Dispersing the Fog, episode 38, here with Paul Palango. How you doing, Paul?
I'm wearing a sweater. It's getting cold.
Is it ever? Yeah, we had a little snow up our way in Gajbro here today, northern Nova Scotia. I don't know if you did down in the
No,
balmy
nothing
South
down
Shore.
here, but you can see I got sheared the other day. I went into a new barber
Oh yeah.
and she said, "What would you like?" And then she just killed me. And basically, they can make a light gray white sweater out of, I guess, what was on the floor. So,
Well, you're looking sharp, Paul. Best thing to do, they see hair all the time. Just do whatever you think is going to look great. Looks good to me.
yeah, whatever. So, you, I hear, were in Newfoundland.
Yeah, I just got back. I was over in St. John's, Newfoundland for the weekend, a bit of a guys' weekend over there, playing some hockey and a lot of businessmen, some meetings with fisheries people over there as well. So a good mix of work and play. But yeah, it was pretty good, and did some hiking too, of course. And it was freezing cold over there, getting down to the zeros. But it was no, it was fun. Actually, it was kind of coincidental timing. Like these are, I think, good, healthy things to do as men to get together and hang out and chat with each other. You don't always get a chance, but it was timely too because I'm doing a talk this Thursday in Antigonish on like men's legal issues. Consent issues, divorce mistakes people make, and just sort of that world, right? And so part of it though is just life advice, right? I mean, there's boys, we've talked about stories before where boys are kind of falling behind in school and not doing as well academically, and what is it, right? Toxic masculinity, confidence issues, something seems to be going on at a macro scale. And so I just like, well, maybe there's a local issue too. And so I put together a little talk and anyway, did some refining over the weekend as I was testing out some of the lines on the boys. So that was good.
Oh, were you on George Street doing that?
We, yeah, we were so behave respectfully, of course, in all circumstances, right? And that's
For those who don't know what George Street is, it's reputed to be the street with the highest concentration of bars and clubs in North America,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is hard to believe.
Well, I mean, it's what about maybe half a kilometer long, less than that really, but every building is a bar. Like that's, and some of them have multiple bars in them. So it's yeah, it's quite a spot. A lot of mostly live music too, and anyway, lots of people out having some good times. Any advice for my talk, Paul? Anything you think young men or men like it's for newcomer men too, like so targeted at different
Yeah,
audiences?
there's a really good one. Get off your computers and meet people.
Yeah,
Get out of the basement, talk to people. Learn how to have a relationship, learn how to lose, learn how to be turned down,
yeah.
and build up some resilience. When you go ask a girl out, she may say no, but eventually somebody will say yes.
It's
You
funny,
know,
Steve Galloway is an American. He's
oh, Galloway,
yeah.
yeah.
I saw him on Bill Maher a few weeks ago. Actually, that was one of the things he said, you got to get used to that and build up a thick skin because, asking a girl to dance, asking a girl out on a date, she might just say no. Well, what's so wrong with that? That's not the worst thing in the world. But if you're sitting in your basement, on YouPorn or whatever, it's
Well,
not
and,
gonna be
and the
good.
other side of it is women need to be educated too, that they can't, if you're going to have a world where you only select the guys who are 6'3", who are making mid six figures and drive fancy cars. There's only so many of them out there, so it's bad for society if you don't know how to, if you only judge everything by how fat the guy's wallet is or how tall he is. Society gets turned upside down, and that's what's happening. You can see that.
Yeah. So anyway, looking forward to that on Thursday, but we've got some great stories and we have a really interesting guest coming, Paul, Moira Webster, and I think we're gonna talk about the YVR report. We've covered that before, but she's featured, mentioned at least in the report, and we've got a few other things to talk about with her too. Maybe what do you want to preview any of that, Paul? Just for
Well,
people.
wait, in a bit.
Okay.
Let's before we get to her, because I think, the one thing about her is that I think we've shown out over the last, couple of months, our interest is in people who are below the radar in news.
Yeah.
They're not the front and center people, but they're usually the people who've been victimized in one way or other by the justice system. And their stories have been forgotten or misunderstood. And Moira Webster is a really good example of how this works. It looks like an old story, but it's actually a current story. And if you stick with it, I think people are going to be shocked.
Yeah, I agree. It was reading up on this, getting ready for the show here. It was like, wow, okay, this is anyway, some very interesting stuff. So we'll get into all that, but we've got a we're getting some good feedback, Paul, from our interview last week with Tammy Oliver McCreary, and you've been hearing some feedback on that too. I know the comments on the show are really positive.
Yeah, I think she did a really good job talking about the Nova Scotia massacres and the fallout and the poor, the unbelievably inept mass casualty commission that essentially covered things up. I think I wrote a book about that. Yeah, the cover up. Um, Two comments, like, one former police investigator from Ontario put it this way: these people are missing so much from the story. Like, obviously, there's so much there that hasn't been told. And it's really, really, it's disturbing to a lot of people watching this. But the most poignant comment talking about YVR came from RCMP, former RCMP Constable Monty Robinson, who was at YVR, was the corporal, one of the four who were charged, one of the two who were convicted of
Convicted, yeah.
perjury. And the recent YVR report by the OPP, just tabled about 2 weeks ago, shows that Robinson was following his directions and training just like the others, and they were made scapegoats. And that's quite clear in the OPP report, which you can find on the CTV website in Vancouver. The full report if you're interested in it.
Yeah,
But what
people
he
need to see
said
it.
is, looking at what happened in the OPP report and how they did it, he said, this should be turned around now. And people listen to this. He says this should be turned around and applied to what happened in Nova Scotia and the Mass Casualty Commission. And, I'm trying to get him on the show, but he can't do it now for legal reasons. He will get here eventually. But what he wrote was this: the only way to get this sham of an inquiry looked at is to get people to push for an investigation into the death of Constable Heidi Stevenson. It's a complaint of criminal negligence on senior RCMP management. They sent untrained, under-equipped, and unsupervised members into an active shooter incident. That's criminal negligence causing death. The As an aside, like, none of this was really investigated, and the Industry Canada, or whatever it's called now, investigated, didn't lay any charges when they should have. He says the RCMP will do everything not to investigate like they did to me with YVR. But Project Eastbourne report documented their playbook. So did I in my book.
Yeah.
Someone needs to make a formal complaint of criminal negligence causing death of Heidi Stevenson to the RCMP and submit Project Eastbourne as evidence of a pattern of misconduct by RCMP leadership et al. In high-profile incidents. The RCMP must outsource the investigation, and the person has to push for this. It only works if you get an A team to look at it, like the team I had investigate YVR. When the RCMP doesn't want things looked at, they will make sure to outsource it to a D team. I would push for the same team who did Project Eastbourne. No charges will happen, as Justice Department is a barrier as well as senior RCMP management will not have maintained a notebook, have incomplete notes, deleted notes, and missing notes. If the families at Al want answers and closure, this is the only way, in his opinion.
Well, I see some, I mean, there's some clear parallels, right? There's,
Yeah.
a process that has already taken place here, the MCC, same as out there, the criminal trials. And then, all right, bring in an outside investigation, the an investigative team to deal with one sort of narrow aspect of it, but then that, can give some insight into the bigger picture. Whoever was on the RCMP investigation side. The difference, though, Paul, and the problem or the barrier might be, in that case, you have Monty Robinson and the other officer who had, of course, a vested interest in it, and the motivation to be dogged about it and keep pursuing it. I'm not sure who that would be in the Nova Scotia massacres that would have that same level of motivation.
There are all kinds of people out there who are, they're big with their mouths and criticizing you, me, and others about not getting to the bottom of things. This is a route. Why don't these people screw up their courage? We can't do it. Sort of, it's not our
Oh,
sport.
no, no.
But there are people out there who have time, money, and the interest to launch this campaign to do this. And while they're doing it, they might want to do who killed Corey Ellison.
Sure.
Another thing where the details are laid out and it's obvious it's been covered up. So, it takes people with a little courage, a little gumption, and a little resilience to do this, not just yapping and getting on their keyboard and sending out rockets attacking people. Do something positive.
Well, one of the other things with speaking with Tammy was she's on the committee now, the implementation oversight committee, and that mandate is going to run out soon. And it doesn't sound, I mean, there's lots of material to read, she says, but it doesn't sound like, and she couldn't explain, she has limitations on what she can say about that. But it didn't sound like a lot was happening, and it's certainly not obvious from the outside that much is. But what we also heard from her was that the Mass Casualty Commission seemed to have been affected considerably by the existence of that private lawsuit, right? And that may have, anyway, limited or certainly affected the way the Mass Casualty Commission unfolded. So, maybe a more pure process that would,
Mhm.
go directly to the RCMP leadership, decision making, all those things would be, I could see it happening, right? It would be a different enough process that, I think somebody could approve it and do a fresh investigation.
Well, I think it's right. The implementation committee chairman, Myra Freeman, who's a customer and friend of mine in our other, in our glass business.
Yeah.
Myra said early on when I talked to her one day, she says, "Well, we're not looking back, we're looking forward." And I said, "Well, you have to look back to understand how to move forward." And that's sort of the way to cover things up. I mean, she's well-meaning and thinks she's doing the right thing, but there's so much dirt back there that has to be dealt with that somebody's got to pick it up. We can't just do it on our own. Somebody's got to have some courage.
One of the yeah, no kidding, right? It's and there's people out there that would have the interest. I don't think Heidi Stevenson's family would seem inclined to be that the voice or the effort maker behind it, but we'll see. We'll see if anybody else does.
Well,
Uh,
there were 22 victims from many families. They had friends, co-workers, whatever. They all have an interest in it. Most of them know now that the whole thing was a sham, the investigation, and that things were covered up. And Heidi Stevenson, to remind people, they put out a story she was in a gunfight with Wortman and fired 14 shots. That did not happen. They made up the story. She was executed. And why did they make up the story? So there's a lot of leverage there. I think it's a legal way to get at the real story because it's all sitting there.
Well, a good input there from Monty Robinson, and it's interesting because one of the stories we'll be speaking about with Moira Webster involves the police talking about smear campaigns, and that's one of their specialties. Uh, Maybe PR campaigns, positive ones in Heidi Stevenson's case, trying to elevate her in a sense, to make, build her up to make the force look good in some way. I don't even know if that's the way to characterize it, but it was certainly a PR campaign.
Yep. And it was the RCMP, as I said, as we'll get to that story, and the smear campaigns. And she's well aware of this. We're gonna show her story in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Before we go on, the other thing I want just to set her up. I've been watching two shows on TV the last couple of weeks, well, the last couple of days actually too. One is Pluribus. Have you seen Pluribus?
Oh no, but this is the one from Vince Gilligan, right?
From
Breaking
Vince
Bad guy?
Gilligan, who
Yeah.
did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if it's an allegory or a satire, but it's really, really good. How 13 people are left on Earth uh, who are not happy and agreeable. They're immune to this virus that was triggered from outer space that turned everyone into the so-called joining, this extraterrestrial virus. Everyone is part of a hive. They all think the same and do the same, except for the 13th people.
Okay.
13 people. And she's cantankerous and obstreperous and just refuses to go along with it, wants to get to the bottom of what's going on. And the funny thing is that going back to the Mass Casualty Commission and the trauma-free approach or
Yeah.
whatever, the whole world in this thing, the people who are in the joining are programmed to do no harm to anyone. And I found that sort of like an inside joke,
Yeah, that
basically.
is funny. Yeah, yeah,
But everyone is traumatized by it. And then she just aggravates it because she tries to get to the truth. Great show. Take a look at a good allegory for what you're talking about. Everyone thinking the same.
yeah, it is. So, Paul, that you're watching that, do you accept that there's aliens out there and that they might come swinging by at some point?
The what?
Do you think there's aliens out there and they might swing by at some point?
Hey, there's all kinds of strange things going on.
Yeah.
Sort of makes sense. There's got to be something out there.
And anyway, they seem it seems more and more likely from legitimate sources. You read these stories every once in a while. But anyway, yeah.
Well,
What was
on the alien question, they did a
yeah.
story the other day. They found tryptophan, which is the stuff in turkeys that puts you to sleep, turkey that puts you to sleep on Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
They found that in an asteroid, tryptophan. So that's like one of the amino acids that life is built on.
Okay.
So it's out there. They found it in asteroids.
The aliens are trying to very slowly put us to sleep.
Yeah, with
All right.
tryptophan.
And what was the other one
But
you're
the other
watching?
story I watched last night is called Stringer. Nonfiction piece, a documentary on Netflix, and it applies directly to what we're going to talk about. Um, Remember the photo from 19, this is before you were born, but from 1972. On June 8th, 1972, napalm bombs were dropped on a village in Vietnam, and a naked 9-year-old girl named Kim Phuc is seen running down the road naked, burns all over her body. And the picture, the dramatic picture, won the Pulitzer Prize for a photographer named Nick Ut, who worked for Associated Press in the United States.
Okay, yeah.
And Nick Ut went on to have a glorious career, numerous honors over his lifetime, Pulitzer Prize. The film makes a convincing case that he did not take the photo, but a stringer took the photo. A stringer being a
Snag.
part-time worker who's either on contract or just sells his stuff incidentally on a day basis to a newspaper or a news agency.
So yeah, I already know what the photo you're talking about. Yeah, that was a famous photo. And so what happened?
Well, the AP bureau chief in Saigon at the time decided that this is a great photo and we're going to attribute it to our own staff photographer
Okay.
and not to some nameless stringer. That would have changed the nameless stringer's life. He got 20 bucks.
Wow.
And
Okay.
Nick got never downplayed this. And as evidence started to build over the years that this isn't what happened, AP, like Donald Trump and the RCMP and other public institutions and their enablers, doubled down in defense of UT, saying, oh, no, no, he took the picture, he took the picture. But they systematically showed using all kinds of photos and recreations that UT wasn't even near the scene. And they can document it. It's very convincing.
Well, normally it would have been very tough to document somebody's whereabouts, but if you're a photographer and you're taking photographs of discrete things, that happened on certain dates, well, maybe it's a little easier to track you. So is this guy still alive, Paul?
Yeah, he's like in his 90s now,
Oh my
and
goodness. Wow.
his life was completely screwed because he never got credit for what he did. But the big news agencies, the big problem with whether it be the police, the news agencies, or whatever, gets back to what I've said over and over again, thinking like a business. When you think like a business, be it government or whatever, all you're thinking about is money. Businesses are built on profit. Governments cannot operate like a business. They're not meant to be profitable. And news agencies are meant to be there acting in the public interest. They have a public trust. But when money and fame and glory enters into it, that can corrupt them. And then Donald Trump, well, there's the height of it. You've got a guy who says he's a businessman running the government like a business.
Yeah.
And look how that's running.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's well, I
And
feel
and
bad. I
and
feel so bad for the
huh?
stringer. I was wondering. I didn't know what you meant by stringer. It was an unusual term to me anyway.
Well,
Uh,
it's a
yeah,
news
newsman.
term, and but the most ironic thing about all this is this story about the AP and them doubling down and protecting UT and doing all this stuff. Just as we were going on air just now to tape this, an AP story appeared. I sent it to you. A
Yeah,
lost generation of news consumers. Survey shows teenagers dislike the news media. And they go on in these surveys talking about how the news media is biased, crazy, boring, fake, bad, depressing, confusing, scary, won't admit its mistakes. Well, it's not, that it's sort of that's a lot of hyperbole on one level, but it's also true. Like we were seeing it over and over again, the media refusing to cover the real stories or get to the bottom of these stories, and people can see that. And the young people who are saying, telling in this AP story, well, we get our news from YouTube. Well, YouTube is not news.
yeah.
That's gossip.
No, there should be trustworthy sources out there and trusted by people, but it's you know they're looking at the media, I think, Paul, and seeing that it's inauthentic in many ways, and that's if you can't admit a mistake or if you're refusing to cover things for the wrong re like people see through that.
Or burying the lead,
Yeah,
like in the YVR where we're going to get to now, the executive summary was from was senior members found did not do anything criminal,
yeah,
and that becomes the headline. But when you go down to the deeper part of the report, the 260 pages, all kinds of untoward things happen, immoral, unethical, whatever, and probably illegal.
yeah.
But the media only covers that headline. The headline goes there, people read it. Oh, well, that's a yawner. We're going to move on.
Moving
And
on, yeah.
it's not the story.
No, that be uh, dig into these more, and we'll do that with Moira Webster. We were going to talk, I think, a little bit about the Gustafsen Lake situation. Do you want to wait for Moira to talk about that, or Should we introduce
Well,
it a little bit?
Gustafsen Lake. Okay, this is an example. Yeah, just as we before we get to Moira, 1 minute
Yeah,
on this. Gustafsen Lake standoff in 1995 was the largest RCMP operation in history at that time. And this was an indigenous uprising. The same thing was uprising thing, same similar thing was going on at Ipperwash in Ontario. RCMP brought in army tanks. They did all kinds of stuff. Moira Webster's husband Mike was involved in this on the RCMP side as a psychologist. The dispute went on for 31 days. And you think, why is that important now?
yeah,
Well, through history, as we'll trace this story with Moira, we see that a number of things happen. And as recently as September 12th this year, CBC's Brett Forrester, through an access to information request, recovered a bunch of documents from Gustafsen Lake 30 years later, and including like an embarrassing backroom meeting that returned to haunt the force. Quote, at one point, one of the officers said, "Is there anyone who could help us with a disinformation and smear campaign?" Another officer, the RCMP spokesman, Sergeant Peter Montague, replied, "Smear campaigns are our specialty."
yeah. Isn't
We've
that
been saying
something?
this for years about the RCMP.
Yeah, and then they say right there. So the article by Forrester, Paul, suggested that the RCMP was using this operation, Gustafsen Lake, as a training. They were going to film it and use it as a training module, I guess, at Depot or
Yeah.
somewhere. And so that was why they were filming these meetings. And that's just an incredible admission. But it implies, Paul, if something is your specialty, that means you've worked on it, you've done it. So that raises some questions. Where else would they, have practiced this um, specialty or applied it in
Yeah.
other situations?
Even in the Forrester story and in the earlier stories, that quote was like 30 paragraphs down.
Yeah,
To me,
that's
that is the story. What other campaigns have they smeared people with?
yeah.
Where have they? We've talked about it before. Tom Juby at Swiss Air, Dave Moore recently, all kinds of people who have been smeared by the RCMP. Me and so many other journalists. I've written about it in my books. And the media will not pick this up and do an annotated version of events and show the history of these things. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have Moira Webster in here today.
And just before we bring her in, I read the article and I was like, well, this is really, really interesting. But the lead on it was about CSIS having provided some intel to somebody, presumably the RCMP, who was engaged in the operational side of whatever they're doing. So CSIS had gathered information on some of these, groups that there were, potential
Yep,
concerns and shared that information. I was like, well, so what, right? Like
yep.
that's fine. I mean, you have to investigate these things. This was just a few years after the Oka, confrontation. All right. Why is that the lead of the story? The lead of the story is the RCMP saying we do smear campaigns. But
And
anyway,
it should be the follow-up story. There should
yeah.
be Fifth Estate should be doing a documentary on RCMP smears over the years and all the people they've harmed and damaged. It's a legitimate story coming out of their own mouths, and we could prove it time and time again, and we will continue to prove it.
All right. Well, that seems like a good cue, Paul, to bring in Moira Webster, and we'll give her a chance to get into the meeting here.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
there you are, a long time no see.
I know. This is my first time on Zoom, so I'm struggling with the whole
You're doing
technology thing.
you're doing Everything right, Moira, and thank you
Oh,
very
good.
much for joining us. You followed the instructions to a T, and it's great to see you here and
Nice to meet you, Adam.
you as well. Yeah, I know I've reading up on you a little bit, and
Uh-oh.
eager. No, not too much, but we eager to get into a good discussion here with you, and I know
Okay,
our audience is looking forward to it as well.
We
great.
just did a little build up for you talking about Gustafsen Lake and how it
Ah,
got started, and the quote about from Sergeant Peter Montague, smear campaigns are our specialty.
right.
And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
build you as a person who, along with your husband Mike, were smeared. Uh,
Totally.
yeah,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
just showing how this worked.
Right.
So for people who don't know you, most people wouldn't know you. Your name comes up in the OPP YVR report in a number of
Right.
places,
Right.
along with your husband Mike. You're not married to Mike anymore, or what happened to Mike?
Mike got sick in 2014, gravely ill, actually. Survived, but was not the same. He decided that he didn't want a family, and he left. We don't know where he is. He's gone.
That's sad to hear. I mean, Mike was
Yeah.
I remember Mike Webster as when I was doing my books in 1998 and 2008 as being oddly an RCMP guy associated with the RCMP who seemed to be making the same arguments I was making.
Right.
And
Because
and
he was
and, and his
independent.
his background is he's a former CFL player, he played on a
Yes.
Grey Cup team,
Yep.
a professional wrestler, then went to
Right.
school, became a clinical psychologist,
Right.
joined the RCMP at 42,
Right.
and worked for many years as a clinical psychologist, only working with policemen.
Right. Specialized in law enforcement. Yes. Yeah. His whole practice was that. So it was. I mean, he was always he was a very interesting guy, obviously. But he found the place where he needed to be, and he joined the RCMP back in the '80s after he had his doctorate, even. And he joined because he wanted to help them. But what he realized after going through Dieppe was that they weren't going to actually use him and his education. And so he quit almost immediately out of Depot and went into private practice. So, uh, but yeah, that was his whole focus. And he'd also been involved in, yeah, I think he had his master's degree at the time, but he'd been involved in a hostage taking at the old Vancouver, or sorry, the BC penitentiary. And I remember him coming home after that. That was a huge um, event. And he came home and he said he needed to go and get his doctorate degree because nobody listens to a master's degree. So he went back to school and got his doctorate. Then when he finished his doctorate, he said he wanted to be an RCMP member. So he wanted to join the best. So, you know, like everybody else on the planet, we believe the marketing that is put out by the RCMP that they are the best, and they're not. They're absolutely not. And he realized that after he went through Depot. He realized that, oh, you know, they need the rank and file members need proper training. They need help. They need to be taken care of. I mean, what other employer, by the way, um, has all of your medical files and all your psychological files, right? Like it's crazy. The whole health services. Basically, it's just a disciplinary arm of the RCMP. That's what they
Okay,
use it for.
let's go back to Gustafsen Lake. That's the first
Sure.
time he gets in trouble there. What happened?
What I know of was he got a phone call in August, and uh, it was one of the emergency response team people and asked him to come up there for a meeting that the RCMP, who this was their Gustafsen Lake was the biggest RCMP operation in Canadian history at that point, and they wanted to breach the encampment. And there were a lot of municipal ERT guys there too that Mike was consultant to, and they said no, they wanted to talk to Mike first. So Mike went up to Kamloops for a meeting and didn't come home for a month. I mean, it was nuts. So that the little clip that you can see on YouTube with Peter Montague saying, yeah, smear campaigns are our specialty. That I think that was the first day that Mike was there, and he's like, "Oh God," because they had the army tanks and everything. They wanted to breach, and Mike said, "No, you could do this through negotiation." And so there was a lot of pressure. I mean, there was pressure from government, there was pressure from the community. Everybody wanted this thing over with, and Mike insisted that they do negotiation. So the one guy in that clip, I think his name was Dennis Ryan, and he ended up being one of the best negotiators. He really turned around up there. He was fantastic. So, Gustafsen Lake ended with nobody being killed. Nobody got killed.
As opposed to Ipperwash in Ontario, where somebody was.
Yes, right, exactly. So, so this was kind of a big deal. And the year before had been Waco, right, where we saw everything go up in flames. And so the FBI was really, really interested in how they had managed to negotiate these people out of Gustafsen Lake and set up a meeting with the RCMP. And of course, they couldn't explain it. They had to have Mike at the meeting. So, but they refused to pay him for his time. We had to get a lawyer. Like they were really miffed. And I heard too through the FBI, I think, that he had been nominated for the Order of Canada for that, and the RCMP quashed it, because they didn't seem to want to admit that he wasn't an RCMP member. They wanted him. They didn't want to admit that they had hired somebody from outside to help them. So they just played the game. Mike was never asked to testify in any of the court proceedings that happened after Gustafsen, because everybody just thought he was a cop. They gave out awards afterwards, I think about 3 years later, and they gave him an award using his old regimental number, which he'd never used. I mean, he quit right out of Dieppe. So they were hiding the fact that that he was an independent consultant. They didn't want to ever admit that.
Is it that they didn't want to share the credit for the success of the mission, such as it was, or that was
I don't know. Adam, I don't know, because Mike actually threw the credit to them. He wrote articles and things. He gave them the credit for that. But they were angry that he got his way at Gustafsen Lake, and so we got blackballed basically. He was doing a lot of training through the Fairmont Academy and all kinds of things in E Division here, and they basically blackballed him after that. But it didn't matter, because he was all over the globe at that point. He was everywhere, and he had contracts
working for other police forces.
Yes, where all including with the RCMP out of Ottawa, though. So E Division just kind of went dark, and he was consulting with Ottawa.
E Division, for those who don't know, is E Division is the RCMP
BC
in British Columbia.
Okay. Yeah. So he was highly regarded, and in our business, you absolutely, your reputation is everything, right? That's what we depended on, was his reputation. And so E Division just said, they weren't hiring him, and they were so arrogant. They thought that nobody was hiring him. It's quite funny. From the emails that I have gotten through ATIP and whatnot, Yeah, they just, and these are guys, and these, you see all these names still, and I see them now in this OPP report, the Gary Bass and Wayne Rideout and, Dick Bent and all of these guys, they were all at Gustafsen. They weren't in those high positions then, but they were all there. And so they remember these things, right? So when
So
the Japan,
before we go on there, like, so how, okay, he's working for the RCMP in Ottawa. How does he end up in 2000 and whatever in at YVR in the YVR case and cause problems there?
right? So um, actually, when they released the Pritchard video, and I think it was on November 15th, or yeah, I think it was the 15th, the Pritchard video came out, and Mike happened to be in Vancouver, and he was teaching crisis intervention with the Vancouver City Police Department. So he actually was in Vancouver, and we lived on one of the Gulf Islands, and so he was there. So the media phoned, and I said, well, you're lucky. He's in town. Um, so he got to see the video and made his comments. The next morning, uh, the Bill Good Show asked him on as a guest, and Mike said, and I'm going to quote this. He said, there were 5 victims at YVR, Robert Dziekański and 4 RCMP members. And they were victims of poor training and a controversial weapon. The emails that I have that followed that statement was everybody running around E Division headquarters with their hair on fire, like, oh my God. So they changed the narrative that he was attacking the members, which he was not. He was attacking the decision makers. Like, this is poor training. You cannot, 95% of the world can look at that video and go, holy crap, that's awful. That's training, right? So then Dick Bent phoned in December, on December 18th, I think it was, phoned our office and said to Mike, if you don't change your opinion, there will be no more work for you. And Mike said, no, he's not changing his opinion. And Dick Bent said, well, what should we do? What should we do? And Mike said, stand up, fess up, and clean up your fucking act. So Dick Bent was upset that Mike swore at him. So, like, I mean, they're just like, oh, yeah. It's amazing how they disregarded this incredible resource they had right here, because their feelings were hurt. They were hurt from Gustafsen Lake. They were hurt on the Dziekański thing. With the RCMP, there's 3 things that they do, and I think the first one is.
Let's slow down. Let's slow down. I think Adam has a question for you.
Oh, okay.
No, I was reflecting on all of that. I mean, it just seems amazing that he would be on the outside, giving some good insight and giving some good leadership advice. And instead of saying, actually, geez, I think that would help our organization, it's
Right.
turn and say, well, now you're a problem. And I could see how that would be difficult for him, but it didn't sound like he was prepared to back down. Maybe his
No.
football background helped him with that one.
Right. Yes. Well, Mike, I when he was a professional football player, I actually didn't like professional sports. I didn't like that whole concept of people being sort of revered because they were good at, us playing ball. But I understand the value of what he learned in professional sports, and that was excellence. And you don't give up, and you have to work hard, and teamwork, and all of that. And he was amazing with all of that. He believed in being the best at what you do. So, when you win a Grey Cup championship, or you win the Florida State champion of the world in wrestling, you know, excellence was kind of a thing for him. And he wanted the RCMP to have the best training, he pitched courses for them. He taught courses for them in undercover work and source management and source handling, all of that stuff. He was amazing. He knew what he was talking about. He was well experienced in all those areas. And it didn't matter because I don't know what they were hiding. I don't know if they all had shares in Taser International and they were afraid, they were going to lose money. I don't know what was going on.
They
But
had shares that's in the OPP report that some of them had shares in the Taser company.
I'd like to know who had all those shares because it made no sense that they were sort of sticking up for this weapon manufacturer and not looking at sort of the result. I mean, thousands of people have died proximal to the use of a taser. It's
But
crazy.
but the best thing to do to secure your investment in the taser company is make sure everybody using it knows how to use it properly and when to use it, and so therefore you don't get all these news stories and
Right,
deaths, and
right.
that would seem to be more problematic if you're
But they
thinking of
changed,
just thinking of your investment.
yeah, but they changed the taser policy right after the Dziekański event as well, right? Because I think their messaging was, you'd rather be shocked than shot. Tasers are safe. I mean, those four members did not go into that airport thinking they were going to kill somebody. They thought they had a
No.
safe weapon, right? And easy peasy, right? Just blast the guy, get him out.
Yeah.
That's training, and that's sort of like if the RCMP or any law enforcement agency buys directly into the marketing of the manufacturer without understanding it themselves, and checking it out and doing due diligence. I mean, that's a problem. And those four members ended up, and I guess the other thing that was so significant about that event was it was videotaped,
Yeah.
right? So their first response, and you saw that with Pierre Lemaitre, who came out and started talking about, giving details about the event. It wasn't true. None of it was true. It was ridiculous. And so but that's their automatic response. Their response is to make the RCMP look good. You see it with the 22 murders as well. I mean, it's every event. It is what they do. When they come out to talk to the public, they spin it so that they look great. So I read the OPP report, and all I'm seeing is, oh, okay, another cover up. Everybody that they talk bad about in this report are the people who were actually looking for accountability with the RCMP. They're accountable to no one, right? So now we're all the bad guys because we wanted accountability, and sure that affects contracts for policing in provinces, and they're just going to make everybody cash heap, right? He stands up to them and they charge him with something. Dr. Rob
What
Gordon.
are the three things? I think there's a couple of things can you do just briefly in the OPP report that dovetail with what Mike was saying about YVR?
Sorry, what's your question?
What is there in the OPP report that confirms what Mike was doing was not wrong with at YVR? Because he said some things, and is there anything there, or is it not
Well,
the
they
right?
basically dismissed him. I mean, there really isn't much. They got a lot of things wrong. They said he was a forensic psychologist. That's not true. And what else did he say? I think I made some notes here. They said that he insisted that the guys had collaborated with their statements in the Braidwood inquiry. Um, that's not true. I have all of his testimony. So I don't know what the OPP is doing with this, but it's almost laughable. At first, I read it and I was kind of upset, and then I read it again and I went, oh, okay, I get it. This is how they do it. This is how, and you mentioned it on your show before. That the other other policing organizations have agreements with each other that they won't disparage each other. Well, there you go. It's right there. That's it right there. The OPP is not going to say anything bad about the RCMP. Oh, you know, they might tweak a little something here and there, but they will never say, no, this was wrong. This was wrong what they did. The YVR4 members got thrown under the bus because the RCMP senior management could not admit. Well, I think the Commissioner Elliott, I think he did actually admit it was training and this controversial weapon. Well, where did he end up? I mean, they got rid of him too. So, you know, it's how they go. It's how they go. And it doesn't matter what political party is in power. The RCMP do their own thing. They are accountable to no one. When the public understands that, right?
Got a question there, Adam?
Well, I was just wondering about Mike's role in the investigation, maybe for people to understand what he was doing. Like, was he counseling the four members, speaking to them or interviewing them, or was he just an analyst for who?
Right, right. The media came to him and said, here's the video. What do you think?
Okay, so he wasn't working for anybody
He wasn't
involved
working
in
for
it. He was
anybody.
just
That was
making
just his
statements.
professional opinion.
Yeah.
And that's when he got threatened by them.
So talk about Project E Northern then. So this is this is the smear and the threat.
Right. And so and that's the other thing that the OPP said in the report was that the complaint to the College of Psychologists by the RCMP against Mike was Project E Northern. No, it wasn't. They had two things running at the same time that I think is what's going on as I go through my research. One was to discredit him so that he couldn't see any more RCMP members, period. So they went after him through the college because their own policy said that RCMP members can see any registered psychologist in good standing with their college. Well, so they had to mess with that. So they filed a fabricated complaint. It made zero sense, and after 8 months of investigation was thrown out. I mean, it was unfounded. But besides that, they also ran their own investigation. This would be Project E Northern, from what I gather. We didn't know that in 2012. I didn't know that until I was starting to get a clue in about 2016, 2020. I'm starting to figure out that, hey, what is this Project E Northern? We were under surveillance, and I ATIP for documents, which you get very few, and they're all redacted, like, you know, just your name is on it. But Project E Northern ran officially from July 23rd, 2012 to November 15, 2012. What that was, I don't know. But in fact, it ran for 3 years because the documents that I have show that they were operating for 3 years. You put it.
Did you have any evidence of, you said surveillance? Did you ever catch them? Did they break in? Did they steal from your computers? What happened?
Well, we did catch them. We caught them on December 24th, 2012. They were following us from our island back to the mainland here. And yeah, we tripped over them. There were two vehicles that were following us. But also our clients, they were under surveillance as well. That summer of 2012, they had a barbecue for the support group. So Mike had started a support group for RCMP members who were off-duty sick and in conflict with their employer. And most of his clients were part of that group, including Catherine Gallifern, who was not a client. But there were others, others who were off-duty sick. They're often, these people are isolated, and there's no mechanism, no workable mechanism to get them back. It seems to be if you file a grievance with the RCMP, then you're harassed until you can't take it anymore. You go off duty sick, and there's no way to get you back unless you cave and say you're sorry. I mean, one of our clients filed a grievance in 2002, and he got notice in 2020 after he had retired under duress, that they finally addressed his complaint, and that it was in his favor, but it was too late. 18 years. It's a non-functioning, right? I mean, you don't even have to be that bright to figure out that this just isn't working.
No, that's not timely justice. But you would see like a group like that of potentially disgruntled members getting together on a regular basis.
Was
You
a
can see
risk.
why the RCMP would be tempted to want to know what's going on there and what are you guys talking about and what's this group really all about.
Right.
But you can't, unless
Well,
there's some reason for it, they can't just.
the irony of that, though, Adam, is that Mike had made a proposal to health services for this support group.
Yeah,
And the answer that came back to him was, no, we're not going to support that. It'll just be a bitch session. And so he said, well, okay, I'll do it on my own. He did it for nothing. It
yeah,
didn't charge anybody anything. And so these people needed help. They were struggling, and the best way to help them is to connect them so that they have outside interests and they can, sort of function in the world again. They were waiting. It's like being so damaged by something you love so very much. They are all good police officers. They loved the RCMP. Mike does too. Mike didn't hate the RCMP. They wanted accountability. They wanted processes that worked. They wanted to be able to say, hey, listen, my boss just, you know, misappropriated $1 million over here, and I don't think that's right, without losing your career over it.
Well,
That's what they were looking for.
what you're talking about, like Project E Northern, even on this show and in my books, we've talked about various police officers, Mounties, who've been investigated. Ken Smith in New Brunswick, who had
Right,
trackers put on his car. Dave Moore, who are a recent guest, all kinds of problems because of investigations there. And you can go right across the country. I can give you someone in almost every detachment
right.
who's investigated by the force in an underhanded way is a way of smearing them or getting them out of the force. So
Yeah,
that's
that's it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And so, that's what they did to Mike. It took them 5 years. So from the Dziekański thing, which was the thing, the Gustafsen Lake thing, they figured they had that under control. But the Dziekański thing was so devastating for them because it was global. I mean, this was an international kind of event. This was on video. They were proven to be liars. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, the and then to say that Braidwood was biased, and so everybody's biased who doesn't buy into their crap, and so we're the bad guys because we want accountability. We, the taxpayers, we are paying for them to be here. We want accountability. And you're never going to get it with the RCMP. They do their own deal. And I mean, Mike used to laugh. He'd say, there's the right way, the wrong way, and the RCMP way. And that's pretty much it. They do their own thing. And I don't know what political party, I think, hopefully we have a new prime minister who's into numbers. Maybe he can go in there and start looking at the numbers. I mean, there's a $1.1 billion lawsuit against them at the moment, right? That's just one of them. It's costing the taxpayers a boatload of cash to keep this false vision of Canada's finest because they have pretty horses and fancy outfits, right? We've all bought into them. All of us did. Canada has. Mike said that we are all blinded by the brand, right? And it's true. We all fell for the marketing. But is it true? Are these people happy? Every kind of report that's come out, the Duxbury reports, all is the RCMP is making their members sick.
Seems
And then
we're
you've got,
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it seems like what we're hearing this from different guests that it's at the member level, there's dedication, there's
Yes,
people that want to be doing the right thing, and it's
yes,
at the leadership level
yes,
where the problem seems to lie. You agree with that?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Mike never went after the rank and file members. These are the people who join because, and then the betrayal when they find out that their organization is horrible, and there's nowhere for them to go. So now they have to think, okay, well, I can retire in 15 years, or, is it worth it to quit and go somewhere else? Or should I hang on? You know, it's horrible. It's heartbreaking actually for them. People don't join the RCMP just for a job. It's a career. It's a calling,
Yeah.
and they think they're going with the best. They're not. Actually, the municipal police departments are better trained than the RCMP. But the arrogance of the RCMP is a whole other thing. So they believe their own bullshit, really, like we're the best. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Transformational change is what Mike talked about a lot. He was extraordinary. And I don't
Last
know. I don't.
question. Is there any legal proceedings on this, or have you attempted to sue the RCMP, or what's happened? That's my last question for today.
It's a good one. Um, I don't have any money because they bled us dry for years, and so I can't afford to hire a lawyer. Any lawyers that I've spoken to run for the hills. They don't seem to really want to get involved in going after the RCMP. I have filed a complaint against Health Services, the two regional psychologists here, with the college. Um, I've done. I've tried. I've tried everything. All of this information down, including all the documents. I have all the documents. There's nowhere to go, Paul. There's nowhere to go. You, unless you've got a boatload of cash, and you can file a lawsuit independently. There's no organization you can go to. There's nothing you can do. There's somebody embedded in there already, and you're gonna get wiped out. That's how it works.
Well,
So it's been very difficult for me. I've been, um, I mean, they just ruin people. They just ruin people. Uh, as independent people, we did not have like a pension plan that, so Cash Heat or these other people that get ruined, well, they've all got pension plans. We got wiped out. I mean, they just wiped us out. That was it. It was over. So I don't know. There's nobody. I've got all the evidence. That's the thing.
Laura, well, I'm of course very sorry to hear about that, the way that they've treated you and what the consequences of all that. You never know. With somebody listening to this, either a lawyer themselves or that
That'd be
knows a
nice.
lawyer that would be a brave lawyer to take this on a contingency basis, and you wouldn't
Yeah.
need to have a lot of upfront money.
Yeah.
There seems to be a real case there, and a defamation case, and we'll frame it in that sort of sense, right? In
Yeah. Yeah, you never
the
know.
courts.
But I'm not holding my breath on anything because I see how it works, and actually the OPP report actually just solidified that for me. It was like, oh, okay, there is no hope. There is no hope that somebody's actually going to investigate what goes on with these people. So they just get away with it.
They
I
just
don't
put
know.
it all out there. It comes out there. It's a 1 day, 2 day wonder, and it disappears, and nobody follows up. That's how it
Nobody, yeah, nobody follows up. And if you speak against them, then you know, they're always the victim and they're always right and they're always the good guys. And anybody who speaks out against them is biased and, you know, whatever. And so they come up with whatever terms they need to make themselves feel better. And because they circle the wagons, right? So they all follow the same thing. Then they do the internal message to discredit thing, and that's just a gem. And then they have this arrogance that they don't even have to be good at what they do. They just have to have the uniform and the rank. And then they're a subject matter expert. We've seen that too. So um, I don't know what this OPP report was supposed to do, but it really is a joke. And you know, I spent several hours with those guys. I showed them all my documents, and they went straight to Project E Norther, which was kind of the back end of it. They didn't look at the stuff that happened in 2007 and 8 and 9 when Mike was being threatened by the RCMP over the Dziekański thing. No, they went straight to Project E Norther, and hey, guess what? Nobody can get any information on that. So I don't know. It's to me, it was insulting and a true betrayal of hoping that we actually have law enforcement in this country that is going to do their job. They don't. They don't.
Well, one final idea before we let you go, more, and we appreciate your time here, is that almost sounds like a book that you could write
I
with
am writing a
those.
book. Yes. Yeah.
Like I think that would be, the cachet of the Grey Cup champion and all that's involved in
I
his
know.
career. I think that would be a fascinating read, and
Yeah.
about the two of you and your experiences.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
we were married for 50 years before this, and the illness that he had apparently was triggered by stress. And so, you know, I guess when your whole career is being ripped from you by these liars, yeah, it put him over the edge. I mean, Mike was amazing, um, but enough is enough. I think in the end, his body couldn't take it anymore. His brain couldn't take it anymore. Whatever. So
Well,
yeah, sad.
thank you for being so. I know it was hard for you to come on and do this, but thank you very much for doing it. I mean, I think people are going to find it very enlightening.
I hope so. I mean, I realize that I'm, you know, just the ex-wife of somebody, but man, you know, we were a team and I've got all the documents. So good luck, everybody. Anyway, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to see you and lovely to meet you, Adam.
Oh, thank you very much, Moira, and yeah, you did a great job in your first Zoom call.
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the technology, but anyway, here we are. Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay,
Thank
excellent.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.
All right, Paul. Well, that was something else. I think people are gonna look up Dave Webster, or sorry, Mike Webster. I don't want to say Dave, and find out some really interesting details there, and go through that report now, people too, that you can get on the CTV Vancouver, British Columbia website, and check out the full story. Paul, what else? Or sorry, you
I
might
don't
have
know if we
something to
have
touch
any
on that.
time here. I had some other stuff I wanted to talk about, but maybe we'll just leave it till next week. And
Do you want to give it a teaser?
I'll give you like the 2 minute version. Hopefully, if I keep it to
Yeah.
2 minutes. Well, first of all, what are you looking at? Because I'll finish.
No, no, I'm thinking about my talk later in the week, and I've yeah, that's where I am. And by the way, people, new background here. People may have noticed that are watching it on YouTube. Changed home office locations, and so this is the temporary setup, but there'll be a more permanent location soon enough.
The story that I'm sort of really interested in right now is goes back to one I wrote about in the fall of 2020, the murders of Bernard and Rosemary Saulnier in Moncton. Last week, 5 people were charged, not with their murder. Someone has already been charged, Jansen Baker. but 5 people, including a notorious drug dealer, Jesse Todd Logue, were charged with conspiracy to murder Sylvio Saulnier, the son of the Saulniers. And then Sylvio was all involved. I've written about this in both my books, that Sylvio was involved with this drug ring. And at one point, as I reported in Anatomy of a Cover-Up, he was on the verge of committing suicide on a Saturday night, and I had to get the RCMP in New Brunswick to go rescue him. And then in January 23, he was found dead in Bathurst, New Brunswick. They said it was a suicide. It wasn't a wrongful death. My sources are telling me it's not so clear, and that the whole group involved in this goes back to among the group, Jansen Baker, and there's another guy, Ronald Canuel, who's currently charged with 2 murders in Truro. And Canuel, Baker, and a bunch of other people from the Bathurst area were a street gang called the Bloods, not the US Bloods, their own sort of Bloods. And they wear this 5 crown tattoo on their faces and heads and whatever. And they're very dangerous people. They may be tied to another pair of murders back in November 9th in New Glasgow of Kelly Trask and Tyler Meager or Mahar. It's a real can of worms, and I've been told that from one of my sources, I can get the pumpkin over my shoulder here. Pumpkin says, informant, someone has turned, someone's being moved around the jails, and they're ratting everyone out, and there's a lot of tension, and more may come out of this or less, because of the sort of all the dynamics and the investigations going on, confidential sources, agents, stuff like that. It's the kind of background that may make all the cases sort of disappear too. So it's an intriguing thing to look at, but there's a lot of detail.
All right, well, that's a good teaser. That's fast. That's fascinating stuff too, of course, and I remember that from your book. All right, well, we'll get into that next week and many other stories. There's always lots to talk about, and we want to thank our guest Moira Webster for joining us tonight, and we want to thank all of you for watching and for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.